A new day dawns on a new season here in the RTG Talladega Challenge. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the debut race of season 52 as we get set for 66 laps of racing to see who's really going to be able to set the tone for this run to the end of the regular season and, of course, to try and make it into the playoffs. It all starts right here tonight. I'm Seth Cole alongside Zach Fremont. And Zach, last season we saw a lot of crazy stuff happen from start to finish of the year. We crowned a champion, but now it's a clean slate. Everybody's got a brand new chance.
Thank you, Seth. Good to hear your voice again. Hello, race fans. Week number 1 of season number 52. Take everything that we learned last season, throw it out the window. Like you said, Seth, everybody's got a clean slate. Everybody's going to start anew. But one of the things not looking so new tonight is our front row. 2-time defending series champion, Joe DeSpirito, starting alongside another former champion in the series, Bob Seminara. Now, Seth, these are guys that we saw run solid all season long. Last year ended up, Joe winning the championship. Bob Seminara ended up coming in third. So if, what we're seeing just based off week 1 qualifying tonight is any indication of what we might see for the rest of the season, those competitors out there better buckle up and figure out what it is that they exactly have to do to chase those two drivers down. But I think we're going to see a lot of excitement this season, as we do every week here at Talladega Superspeedway with this roster of drivers from Rolling Thunder Gaming. It's going to be a good time. Seth, can't wait to get it going.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, with it being Talladega and the unpredictability, not really going to be able to rely a lot on the statistics of last season, but we'll certainly be referring to them since obviously they may have some bearing into what we'll see in tonight's race. There'll be 37 drivers that'll take part in the first race of the season, and one driver who we are used to seeing associated with a certain number is actually driving a number tonight that we're used to seeing associated with a different driver. And we're going to get the scoop on that here this evening, as our pre-race driver tonight is going to be Chuck McClure. Hey, Chuck, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRN studios. You got us?
How's it going, gentlemen?
Well, man, the first thing we got to ask, we got to find out, because I had to do a double take in practice just to make sure that I was seeing this correctly. You're out there tonight in the number 28 Motorcraft Ford that we're used to seeing Mark Paglia drive. So what's the story behind that?
We just want to show how much we support him. His wife's going through some tough times and has a surgery scheduled for tomorrow, and we just kind of felt like he should be here too.
Hey, Chuck, it's Zach. Obviously, all of our thoughts with Mark, his entire family, his wife. Hopefully everybody can pull through that, and come through on the other side healthy and better off than everything is right now. So what's the plan? Is this your plan to pilot his car for him until his return? Are you planning on running his number all season long, or will we at some point see you back in your 17 again?
I hope to run the 17 soon. It's kind of up to him. Maybe I'm going to make him look bad tonight. I don't know, but that's sure not my intention too. We want to get a win for him and his wife, and just do anything we can do to help.
Obviously here, Chuck, last season you made it into the playoffs, but you weren't quite able to make it into the Final Four. We know that's obviously the goal here this season, but also probably to try and find victory lane. You were runner-up 3 times last season, so how much cooler do you think it would be if you were able to not only win here tonight, but win in that 28 car?
That would just be the berries if I could win tonight, especially in this car, especially for Mark and his wife, and it would get me into the playoffs. But that's all second to me. As long as Mark and his wife get some kind of cheer, joy out of this, I'm tickled to death.
Well, Chuck, we wish you the best of luck here tonight. Certainly going to be a lot of fun to watch you up there towards the front of the field. Good qualifying effort here tonight up inside of the top 10. Best of luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
And Seth, that is just a great example of how tight-knit a community this RTG community really is. It's a regular occurrence here at RTG for them to run memorial races, for guys to run each other's cars if somebody else is in a jam. And even the community of, between races in the middle of the week, trying to get with other drivers to help each other out, make sure that everybody can do whatever they can for the other, to try to help everybody keep up to speed speed, make sure wheel settings are set. If anybody's having any sort of technical issue on their end with the PC, there's so many guys that are willing to step up and really help each other. So, obviously, like I said to Chuck, there are thoughts with Mark and his wife, the whole Paglia family. Hopefully we can see everybody healthy and on the other side of that sooner than later.
And obviously up here in the booth, we try to remain as impartial as possible. But when you have a story like that, it's hard not to pull for somebody that is doing something like that. Last year, I had the privilege of calling 2 races, one in which Brian Voiles ended up winning a race that was in tribute to his dad. And then I ended up calling a race where Robert Balcom ended up winning a race that was in tribute to his wife. Those kind of behind the scenes stories, a lot of times people don't know that's the kind of things that are happening, and to just kind of see that come to light and see a driver that's got that kind of a goal be able to do well, it's very emotional, even for somebody that's up in the booth calling the shots.
Absolutely, and that just kind of goes back to like what I said. There's a lot of big hearts out on that grid. You see all these cars gritting up behind the pace car on pit road right now. It just speaks to the community. Like I said, it really does. And when we hear things like that they're just heartbreaking. I mean, it's devastating to a single family. So to have your friends and your other racers come out and rally behind you and around you, and just know that they've got each other's backs, it's a really great thing to see, and it's a really good feeling to be able to be a part of a crew like that.
Absolutely, as it's going to be, as I said, 34 or 37 drivers rather on the grid rolling off here. And as you said, no surprise of our front row, Joe DeSpirito lining up here for the pole position alongside of Bob Seminara. Now, the interesting thing about these two, going to some statistics from last season, in the first 5 races of the year, Bob Seminara went to victory lane twice. But Joe DeSpirito had to wait until the playoffs began, race 11, before he went to victory lane. So for either one of these two, is there a sense of urgency to set the tone early and find victory lane here in the first race of the season?
Well, knowing how difficult this Chally Challenge series is with the number of drivers that these guys get every week. I mean, like you said, there's 37 drivers that are going to be out here taking the green. I think with race number 1, not only for Joe DeSpirito and, Bob Seminara, but every one of these drivers in a win and you're in format, if you can get that win week number 1, that is tremendously huge. We had a couple big upsets at the end of the regular season, at the end of, each of the respective stages in the playoffs last season, that we saw drivers get eliminated that you wouldn't traditionally think that you would see get eliminated from this Chally Challenge series. So again, yes, I think it's very, very important for somebody to go out here and try to steal this victory. We know, we heard from Joe DeSpirito many times last season with as many pole positions as he got, that wasn't the same as getting those wins, which he was ultimately able to get in the playoffs when it counted. So, got to go out there, got to get it done week number 1. It's time to go.
Absolutely. You saw there a little bit of a reset. I ended up hearing over race control that someone had lost connection, so they did set it back so they'd be able to get out onto the track, which actually works out for me because then I'm able to go through this 37-car starting lineup. So we mentioned the front row. Row 2 is going to find Grant Wesley alongside of Bernie Mobbs, Jessica Shelton and Donnie Garrett in row 3. Chuck McClure, who we just talked to, he'll roll off on the inside of row 4, Bob Dixon to the outside in 8th, and then Tim Knopfsker, 2-time winner from last season, and Rodney Sullins will complete the top 10. Jeremy Jeffries will be 11th with Josh Metallic in 12th. 13th, Dave Melson. New number this season for Dave Melson, by the way. Richard Martin in 14th, and Jerm Lewis will complete the top 15. Then it'll be 16th, Doug Woolley. Row 9 is going to find Wiley Coate and Ken Roberts. Row 10 with Jack DeSalt and Chris Elliott. 21st will be Bobby Farrell. 22nd, Sonny Tallman. 23rd, Perry Bond, Billy Ellisler, and 24th, David Cannon makes his return to the Chally Challenge. He's going to be 25th. Glenn Harris in 26th. Chris Emery, 27th. 28th place is going to be Jeff Crivello in 29th. Wayne Pribnow. John Godfrey, who we saw take the checkered flag in last year's season finale, he'll line up 30th with Manny D in 31st. Robbie Nice is 32nd. 33rd, Mike Rogers, 34th. Hank Middleton. And the last driver to take time in 35th will be Dave Earlywine. He won this race 1 year ago, starting from 25th, but tonight, 36th place starting will be Dante Ricky, and then completing the field in 37th will be Cy Jones.
Man, how cool is it to see such a full field? It's one of those things, and we saw this a lot last season where, there was a lot of cars out there on the track most weeks, and it seemed like it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It was easily averaged around, 31, 32 cars starting the field every week, but that just goes to show the popularity of this series, especially being early in the season. Like we spoke on earlier, Seth, if you can go out there and sneak a week 1 victory, you're set until the playoffs, assuming is you stay within, I think it's the top 20 in points. So it's just a huge draw, and I think it's going to be a really, really exciting race tonight.
And also, this happened twice last year, but it also happened in the season opener. Yes, there were 21 drivers in that race, but they went green flag the entirety of those 66 laps. Now, there's 37 cars in the field here tonight. The odds aren't necessarily in favor of us going clean and green all the way, but who knows? We've seen a lot of strange things happen here in the Tally Challenge.
Absolutely. And you would think, with a bigger car count, it would lend itself to more cautions, but that's not always the case, depending on what happens out on the racetrack, how it happens. We had the one race last season where we had 3 or 4 incidents, multi-car incidents at that on pit road that never once brought out a yellow flag. So they're coming into the tri-oval now. Everybody's settling down into their seats. It's a new year. It's a new season. Everybody's starting off on equal footing, Seth, as they work their way out of the tri-oval. A familiar sight, the 24 Joe DeSpirito will lead them to the green flag here tonight. Season 52, race number 1 from Talladega.
Joe DeSpirito hoisted the championship trophy 1 year ago, and he will be the one to lead them into the first couple corners here for the first lap of this race. Inside line, as we're used to seeing, going to get that early advantage, and then they're going to jump up there to that middle line, which is where everybody's going to want to be. That seems to be the fastest way around the racetrack. Everybody seems to migrate, if not to the second and third groove. A lot of drivers don't really like the bottom, but Jessica Shelton down there with Chuck McClure. I'm hopefully going to call Chuck McClure correctly there in that 28 tonight, because that's going to be difficult for me. So used to seeing Peggley in that 28 car.
Well, so far you're 1 for 1, Seth, so I think you're doing all right so far. Jessica Shelton, you see her, the 4th car on the inside line right now, has 3 or 4 stout pushers behind her. So if that bottom line was ever to have a chance to have an advantage here early in the race, I would say it's right now. But as we're used to seeing right now, that middle line being led by the 24 of Joe DeSpirito, they're kind of checking out a little bit through 1 and 2. 3 cars now the advantage in that middle line before you get to your first side-by-side out of 2 with Jessica Shelton and Bernie Mobbs.
Yeah, new colors there for that number 90 Dodge of Bernie Mobbs on the top side, 4th on that outside line. And another thing that we talked about last season, I guess we really should carry over into this season, is a lot of what we saw last year out of drivers in the midway portion to the end of the season kind of had them jump to the forefront for us of drivers that might be able to sneak playoff spots this season. I'm looking at guys like Tim Knopfsker and Jeremy Jeffries, who won last year but just weren't able to get up high enough in the point standings for it to count for a playoff position. John Godfrey was able to pull off that season finale victory. If he's able to do that again here during the regular season, he'd be in the playoffs for the first time.
Absolutely. And how many drivers did we see last season that we're used to seeing getting victories on the super speedway, but they were never quite able to get it done? So again, that speaks back to, again, that week number 1 of season 52. It's so important to get yourself off to a strong start here. That way you don't have to worry about all the rest of the season leading up to the playoffs. You just need to worry about finishing races, and that is one of the unpredictable factors here at Talladega Super Speedway. Unless you are out there on the track by yourself, you never quite know what's going to happen or what's going to happen around you. So you got to get yourself in a safe spot early on.
Now, a lot of different drivers with different sponsorship, but still same number. I mentioned about Dave Melson, how he's in a new number this season. There you see the very familiar colors, the very familiar sponsorship, but instead of the familiar 13 that we've seen him run in the last couple of seasons, he's now moved over to the number 38.
And I believe, unless I'm mistaken, his son used to run with RTG quite a bit, Stevie Melson, and I believe that he may have run the 038 car. So I'm not sure if that's another placeholder or if Steve has decided that he's done. So Dave decided he would take over that 038, but good looking car out there on the racetrack right now. He looks to be running just in front of the middle of the pack. We know Dave can get it done. We've seen him run up front, seen him run really well. So as the race plays out, we'll have to keep an eye on that driver.
Looking at the new colors here of the 39, Josh Metallic maybe doing us a little bit of a favor so we don't have to tell the Oscar Mayer cars apart, as he's got U.S. Air Force as his primary on that Ford this season.
Josh Metallic, another one of those drivers that we mentioned earlier. We're used to seeing run really strong and really well in the Tally Challenge. He wasn't able to get himself one of those victories. He went out after playoff round number 1, so you know that he would love to bounce back from that with a really stout season. But if you look just behind and below him, as you mentioned earlier, the 088 of Tim Nofsker and Jeremy Jeffries, each of those drivers who won races last season but weren't able to get themselves in, we see they're here for race number 1. So we know that they're here to try to play spoiler as well. Looking around the field just a little bit more, we see that 99 of Doug Woolley back there. It's good to see Doug out here on the track. We see him here every now and again, but it looks like for race number 1, he's ready to go. And behind him, that 6 of Wiley Coate. We know Wiley's willing to get up there and get a little bit racy too. So a lot of guys just kind of biding their time out there on the racetrack, working lap number 6 of 67 here on the night. And Rodney Sullins kind of drifts up. Looked like he might have just brushed the wall, but doesn't look to have hurt his momentum too bad down the backstretch.
Boy, we're going to see a lot of those moments in this race. That's the first one that just made my blood pressure go through the roof. Yeah, it was contact slightly between Rodney Sullins and Josh Metallic. Metallic was into the left rear quarter panel. That 38 sent him up the track. I don't think he did brush the wall. I think he was able to gather it up, but that really stacked him up behind. Wiley Coate took evasive maneuvers, went up to the third groove. That was a close call there, up towards the front of the field.
And the ripple effect that had from happening right in the middle of the field, you look just a little farther back, and those guys are 3 wide. So I don't think anybody's looking to get too aggressive too early here. However, that being said, I don't think anybody's going to want to just sit back and wait if there's a huge loss of momentum out there on the racetrack. And you see everybody kind of working themselves back out as the top 5 have now broken away in that middle line heading off into turn number 3.
Like this group towards the back that were 3 wide you were alluding to, they've been able to settle it out. Glenn Harris in the mix of this, Robbie Nisus with new colors on his 54, Hank Middleton, another driver that made a number swap during the offseason, Bobby Farrell. He drove the 45 back in season 51, now in the number 92.
Yep, and Bobby Farrell is one of those drivers that we know can, get up here and get work done. He's really fast. He's a great competitor out here with this series. But as we mentioned many times last season, Seth, the thing that seemed to hold Bobby Farrell back the most was there was a lot of times that he couldn't be present right at the start of the races. So he would be numerous laps down by the time that he would get his car out on the racetrack. So Bobby Farrell, another guy, keep an eye out on here tonight.
About manufacturer changes, haven't talked about that. During the first half of last season, Billy Elliser was in a Dodge. He then swapped over to a Ford. Now he starts off season 52 in a Chevy Camaro.
Absolutely. And, I'm not really sure. Let me put it this way, Seth. As a driver myself, and I use that term loosely because I don't think I'm that amazing or anything like that. But I think I've driven just about all of the makes of cars, and maybe it's just a driver's mentality, but I feel like there is a little bit of a difference between manufacturers. I don't know if it's how they're designed in the whole development process or how that works, but if you notice, it seems like we see a lot of Chevrolets running together. They run good, which is traditional. It's what you would usually see in real life, on the super speedway as well. They just run really good together, but sometimes you just need to change it up. If you feel like something's not quite working the way that you want it to, just give it a little change. And sometimes that manufacturer change can be a little bit, and whether it's in our heads as superstition or not, as a driver, when we find something that works, we're like, oh, well, it's obviously the car.
Well, I've got a kind of way that I choose a manufacturer of how I drive. It's if it looks good with the paint scheme. Sometimes the paint scheme looks better on a Dodge than a Chevy, or vice versa. Whoa, Donnie Garrett gets his left sides down there on the apron. So, there might be some personal preference that way for some of these drivers as well. But you're right. There are certain drivers that they won't drive anything other than a Chevrolet, or they won't drive anything other than a Toyota. Just the way it works for them sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that calls back to is, what is that sort of brand loyalty that you have as, a race fan in real life, and you see these cars and your favorite drivers and you're like, oh, I like that one. That's the one that I want. When your favorite driver runs a Chevy, you might want to run a Chevy. Or if you're partial on, dyed in the wool, a Ford fan, that's all you'll drive in everyday life. You'll go, okay, well, I'm racing, I got to come out here in a Ford. Me personally, the way that I do it, it depends on the car payment that I'm making, Seth. If I'm paying for a Chevy, then I'm probably going to be driving a Chevy out on the racetrack too.
Absolutely. Now, if everybody here that's watching is new to this tally challenge, let's give you a couple of numbers to look out for here. Provided we don't have a caution prior, these drivers can make it about 19 to 20 laps on fuel, so we're halfway through a fuel run. One thing you always seem to stress there, Zach, is these drivers, yes, they race aggressively, but they always seem to try and make it at least to that first round of green flag pit stops.
Absolutely. Making it to the first round of green flag pit stops can really determine how the race can play out. If you notice, we tend to have more cautions on nights that, we have the first yellow flag before the first round of green flag pit stops. Now, guys know that if they can make it to that first round of green flag pit stops, make it back out again, it will spread that field out a little bit. And when you spread the field out a little bit more, it tends to lend itself to longer green flag runs. Now, what that can also do, however, is lend itself to, big mistakes coming onto and coming off of pit road, because those pit entry speeds are so much faster coming off of turn 4 than what they would be under yellow flag. So it can also be a point of excitement if we see a long green flag run incoming, and we know that there's a lot of drivers that are going to have to dive off on the pit road under green. Hang on, man. We had a couple multiple, car incidents last season, so we'll have to keep an eye out on that.
Yeah, definitely. As we're watching this battling up here at the front, Jessica Shelton actually jumped down to help the inside line with Donnie Garrett and Chuck McClure. And one thing I was noticing is that when Garrett was leading that line, he wasn't really losing ground. They were able to hold their ground. He was either beside Bob Dixon or Jessica Shelton at the time for 5th or 6th. So they're able to hold their ground. They just haven't really been able to advance their ground on that bottom line.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck there. But if you look at the first 3 or 4 cars that we have that are running right up front, that's Despirito, Wesley, Seminara, Bernie Mobs. Those guys, we know they run really well together. And when you can hook those cars up bumper to bumper to bumper like that, you can make a lot more speed. So where that bottom line is scrubbing off a couple miles an hour coming into the corners, that middle line can really maintain that momentum through the corners, and there's a little bit less to worry about. As you see now, Despirito does come down to the inside line. That surprises me just a little bit, especially considering how fast they are in that middle line. But, it's early enough in the race that they can try something, see how it works, see how their car likes it, and you'll have that in the back of your memory come the end of the race.
We know that at super speedways, every position really matters from the start of the season all the way to the championship race at the end of the season. And the championship 4 last year of Despirito, Wesley, Seminara, and Shelton, they finished all nose to tail, crossing the start finish line there at the end of that one, 6th through 9th. Well, right now, your final 4 hold 4 of the top 5 positions.
Yeah, and ironically, what positions are they running in right now?
The same position.
Wesley, Seminara, and
now.
Shelton. Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. So I don't think there's any surprise there. We know Jess Shelton has been working on her program really hard. We saw, a huge improvement for her from the start of the season to the end of the season. If you remember right before the playoffs, Jess Shelton was talking about if we can make the playoffs. Not only did she make the playoffs, but she made a legitimate shot at the championship that final race. So it's one of those things, we talk about longevity and endurance in a single race. You have to make sure your car makes it to the end of the race. It works that way throughout the season as well. You want to start well and make sure that you can continue running well to put yourself in a good position to be in that final 4 come race number 15.
I'm taking a quick look here at my running order, and a name that is missing. I'm going to drop to the back just to see if I am correct, but it looks like the defending winner of this race, yes, I do not see the 84 of Dante Ricci out there on the racetrack.
That's strange. I'm not sure if he may have broke. I also don't see that car sitting on pit road. So I'm kind of curious, Seth. We know that they did originally regrid at the beginning of a race because of a driver disconnection. I'm now wondering if that might be the 84, because I actually don't recall seeing him out on the field now that you mention it.
Yeah, I saw him. Oh, whoa, we got a car blinking. That's Bob Dixon up there on the top side. But yeah, I saw him on the qualifying results, and I did see him there for the drivers' meeting. But I'm looking right now, and I do not see him currently here in the TeamSpeak. That is a tough break there for the guy that won the season opener 1 year ago, which was a multi-win season for him, advancing him into the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's early enough in the season, and who knows if he was just having a basic internet issue at home or something like that. If that pops back on, being that he did qualify, he would be able to start the race, albeit multiple laps down. But I also have a feeling if he weren't able to, they would very likely give him a provisional, as he was here for drivers' meeting as well. So, like you said, that's a tough break for Dante Ricky. That's not how you really want to start the first race of the season, but it's also not the end of the world.
Got a couple drivers I'm hearing that are coming in this lap. The 9 of Chris Elliott is one that we're expecting to hit pit road this time, as a lot of drivers are going to start thinking about making those green flag pit stops.
Yep. I only see 4 cars coming onto pit road right now. I didn't see exactly what their numbers are, but as you see out on there on the racetrack right now, everybody trying very hard to work their way to that inside line. That way they're not stuck in that middle line if they are indeed going to be coming into pit, in case there are cars on the outside of you still coming at speed trying to go around you, just trying to get themselves out of harm's way. That's why you see the long single file line right along that extreme inside of the back straightaway and turns number 3 and 4. Let's see who we got coming in this time off of turn number 4. Almost everybody.
Quite a bunch of the leaders there, yeah.
It looks like everybody made it in pretty clean. I don't see any cars sitting sideways. No contact, barring any penalties.
Oh, someone's spun. Cy Jones and Robbie Nicis there at the entrance of pit road, but no caution.
That is correct. No caution. There is also another car sitting on pit road. I believe it might be the 710 of Manny D. He is parked up against the inside pit wall there. Everybody else appears to have made it into their pits fairly clean. So as I started to say, barring any penalties for speeding onto pit road, it looks like these guys are all going to probably come off pretty well together, which means I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple large groups of cars making their way back together. And look at this, coming off of pit road, all these cars coming off together, Seth, barring any incidents coming in right now, which we are watching cars coming in. There's one car out on the grass spinning back down across the track.
Yep, Wiley Cody clipped the 038 of Dave Melson.
So that's going to break up that second. Another car out into the
Glenn
grass.
Harris.
Glenn Harris, I'm not sure if he had contact with somebody that was coming out of their pit. Still clean and green out on the racetrack. So we saw that first group get off all together. They're going to be able to bunch back up. However, that second group now has had a pretty massive split right down the middle.
And the whole pit road is blocked up. Glenn Harris had to back up to get to his pit stall. He then made a little bit further contact with Dave Melson, and they had all 3 lanes of pit road all blockaded up.
Yeah, it's lucky that it wasn't a larger incident than what it ended up being. So it doesn't look like it's going to affect anybody too bad. I'd be surprised if anybody even really got any damage out of that, but it's obviously going to put at least a few drivers pretty far behind. And it's early enough in the race. If we get a quick yellow, they might be able to get caught back up. But I don't know if you would want to be those 3 or 4 drivers caught outside of the big draft. Not at this point.
We talked about avoiding penalties. Now, I don't know about Dave Melson and Glenn Harris, since they spun out into the grass after they had hit pit road, but definitely saw the 6 of Wiley Coate did not make the commitment line, so he'll be sitting on pit road for about 30-second penalty. That time penalty really going to hurt him and his chances of at least being up here in the lead pack.
Yeah, that's a big hurt, and that's really unfortunate for him as well, because he made no errors coming into the pits, getting woed down, getting to pit road speed. Unfortunately, it was just another car clipping his rear end that spun him out in the grass. So big hit for the 038 right now. We'll have to see if he can bounce back from that. Looking back up toward the front of the field, no surprise, it looks like Joe DeSpirito and Grant Wesley. However, that's flip-flop. Grant Wesley now your leader, with Joe DeSpirito running in second. And it looks to be about a breakaway of 7 cars before there's 4 more behind them, and behind them probably another 5 or 6. So we're easily going to have an 11-car pack, possibly even 16 or 17 if everybody can get caught back up. Everybody's spread out pretty well right now, but those front bunch right now, they're in single file, and they're looking to make some speed.
Yeah, Knopfsker, Garrett, Metallic, and McClure, they were a part of that group of 4 that did reel in the top 7. Looking here at Chris Emery, he's leading Dave Cannon. I think these were Actually, at least 3 of these drivers were the ones that were the first ones to hit pit road: Emery, Cannon, and Chris Elliott. The other driver I think that came down pit road with them is currently at the tail end of the field, that being the 055 of Ken Roberts. He's back in 29, so he wasn't able to keep touch with them. Bobby Farrell and Richard Martin in this group as well. So right now you're looking at this secondary group, which currently holds 11th back through 16th.
And you know what that secondary group is thinking right now? They are absolutely in love with the fact that Jessica Shelton, Tim Nofsker, Donnie Garrett, Josh Metallic, and Chuck McClure are trying to make that outside line work, because what they've done now is they've essentially cut down that speed that those 10 or 11 cars would be making together, and they're now running double file. So assuming the 003 of David Cannon can stick to the 222's back bumper, I would say another lap or two, and they're going to be right back up in the mix of things as well. So I think we're going to have a pretty respectable front pack here once everybody gets grouped back up.
So we're a third of the way through this race. So far, have not seen the caution. I don't want to jinx it. Aftermath of that first round of green flag pit stops, Cy Jones, Dave Melson, Wiley Coate, and Glenn Harris, they have all fallen off the lead lap. And you mentioned about Manny D being there on pit road. He's actually taken his number 710 to the garage area, so he'll be the first retiree from tonight's race. 35 drivers still running, currently 31 of them on the lead lap. And it looks like we had a couple of other drivers that might have had some pit road miscues, because Bob Dixon has lost the lead pack by a good margin. John Godfrey, our winner from the season finale last season, he's way back there. And then, of course, we also know that Robbie Nice has had a pit road incident coming to pit lane with Cy Jones. Those 3 drivers, and Godfrey, Nices, and Dixon, they are way back behind the leaders.
Yep, and in the nicest and Cy Jones incident, it looked like what happened was, as Cy Jones was trying to get his car down to speed, he was blowing up, probably downshifting. Looked like there may have been just a little bit of wheel hop, and he spun right down in front of the 54. So not a whole lot that either one of those drivers could do about that, as we see the leaders now catching 3 cars, working their way to the inside. I see one of them being the 08 of Glenn Harris. Another one's going to be the 143 of Bob Dixon. These 3 all going to be going 1 lap down here, but I wouldn't doubt that without any damage, they're probably still going to be up to speed. So they should be able to clutch onto the back of this field right now. The other car, the number 711, John Godfrey, winner of a final race last season. So all that they really need to do is kind of hold on to this draft. If another yellow flag comes out, they could put them in position for, lucky dogs and or wave around spots, depending on the timing of the caution in regards to pit stops. So I think they'd be pretty content right now. Yeah, it stinks that you're a lap down, but you're right there with that main lead pack. You can see the leader out your front windshield, so that's a little bit more comforting.
Absolutely. Still plenty of racing to go here as well. And we know that Talladega always seems to take not only us, but these drivers by surprise in what it's going to do, especially when we get down to the closing stages of this race. Now, you talked about this, and I'm going to just touch on it a little bit more here with the fact that we had a lead change under that round of green flag pit stops. DeSpirito was leading Wesley for the first 18 laps, and then Wesley got the race lead off of pit road and has led the last 5. Let's speculate that this thing goes green to the end. It's almost looking like, with that being said, with what we just saw,
3 wide.
Pit road could play a factor into who's going to win this race.
Pit road could play a factor. Another thing that could play a factor is guys deciding that they do or don't want to abruptly work with somebody out on the racetrack. Josh Shelton gave a big push to the number 8 of Jeremy Jeffries down the back straightaway. I thought Jeffries was going to get a little bit of a run. However, he did not. Tim Nofsker then broke to the far inside, decided not to go with Shelton. And now we see we've got 3 wide racing as this inside line is now coming to try to make a bit more waves for the lead here down the backstretch.
Tim Nofsker was a 2-time winner last season, winning races 6 and 8. Now here in a full-time season, we hope. We're going to see if he's going to be able to get himself a playoff spot close there between himself and the 43 of Richard Martin, who was in the middle groove.
Man, I don't know if Martin thought maybe he had just a little bit more room than what he did, but he almost came right across the right front fender of the 088. Good thinking on both drivers' parts to avoid any sort of incident. But as we mentioned, we now have 1 large pack back up front again. But again, Wesley and DeSpirito are running that inside line. So I'm interested to see, can David Cannon, who is now leading that outside with the push from the 28 of Chuck McClure. Can they make some time and get up there and contend for wins? Real cool to see Bones out here again, by the way. It's very rare that we see Bones make an appearance in that number 003 car. Bones, David Cannon, of course, one of the other regulars. He used to run the full schedule events at RTG. Now he's toned it down just a bit back to the super speedways. That's where he prefers to run. So good to see him out here having a strong top 10 run rate at this point.
Can't place my finger on the exact race, but I believe the last Tally Challenge start that Dave Cannon made was at the end of season 50. Did not run a single race during season 51. So yeah, great to see him, that very familiar blue and gray number 3 Dodge out here and leading that top groove, trying to crack into the top 5. He's just a nose ahead of Bernie Mobbs for 5th place for the moment.
Absolutely. They're going to try to make that run. I'm interested in seeing if any of those top 4 decide to try to jump out there. Again, our final 4 in the championship last season, currently running in the top 4 tonight. That's got to be a real confidence boosters for those drivers to come off a season like that and to come out in race number 1 and you're just running top 4, top 5 the entire race. But Dave Cannon, again, as we mentioned, he looks to have gotten about a half a car length, maybe now past the 90 of Mobbs as he works along the outside of Jessica Shelton coming out of the trioval.
Right now, we've got 16 drivers up in this lead pack that are on the lead lap. A couple lap machines intermingled in this group as well. It's a long ways back, 9 seconds before you get to the second group of Sonny Tallman, Jeff Crivello, Hank Middleton, and Perry Bond. Those are other drivers, much like some of these guys up here that are trying to battle for lucky dog spots. They're hoping to see a caution flag come out just as long as it's not them bringing that yellow flag out.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of guys, if you're not in this lead pack right now, you really want to see a yellow. We're just 3 laps away from being halfway through this race already. It's been clean and green. Don't have much to review for you other than a couple incidents that happened coming onto pit road under green flag, which, played victim to the 038 of Dave Melson, the 08 of Glenn Harris, the 54 Robbie Nisus, the 7 Cy Jones. Everyone else has been able to maintain position pretty well, and we do have a lead change, Seth. That 003 of David Cannon has gone to the lead across the line coming out of turn number 2 right now. Wesley's going to try to give him a little bit of a run down the backstretch.
Well, you remember last season how we kind of had those terrible trios. If they hooked up, you couldn't stop them. We might have one here in season 52, Cannon, McClure, and Metallic, because they have been lined up nose to tail down the back straight with the last 3 laps or so. That's how they've been able to get Cannon up alongside of Grant Wesley, and they have kept that draft tight.
Absolutely. And that's just a few of the guys that we have talked about on a routine basis that we know when they hook up together, they make a lot of speed. But right now, it looks like we have a third line forming on the outside as they come across the trioval. The number 9 of Chris Elliott, he's going to be on the outside of Richard Martin in the 43 right now as he works to the right rear fender of Josh Metallic, who is running currently 6th spot in the middle line. I think we're going to have a run for the lead that's going to be a 3-wide battle here before too long, Seth.
Yeah, I think things are going to get a little congested in these corners as well. We're used to seeing that bright red Dorito sponsorship on Chris Elliott, which he still does have this season, but featuring the Cheetos Mobile here tonight, trying to lead that third group with Tim Nofsker and Wiley Coate up in that third line. Right now, that's a 3-wide battle for what would be right around the 8th position currently.
Grant Wesley currently controlling the field on the inside. Cannon seems to make just a little bit of time out of the corners and at the end of the straightaways, but right now Wesley's still your leader. Bones running in 2nd. Looks like 3rd is Despirito. 4th is Chuck McClure and Mark Paglia is number 28. 5th is the 712 of Bob Seminara. And these guys are starting to get a little bit more racy, which I am kind of surprised, but I'm not surprised to see at the same time, as we're now only 5 or 6 laps away from our second set of green flag pit stops. So that kind of leads me to believe, Seth, guys might be working on trying to position themselves to try to get down to that inside line. And with the way as congested as it is right now, it's looking like it's going to be kind of tricky.
And I think the key word, you just said it, positioning. A lot of times we talk to drivers, between the final pit stop and the second pit stop of these Tally Challenge races. And, we ask them, why are you racing so hard knowing there's another pit stop coming up? And they say, that extra 1 or 2 positions you may pick up there on the racetrack could be the difference on whether you're going to finish 1st or 2nd by the time the checkered flag waves. And I want to just touch again here on Dave Cannon and Chris Elliott. 2 guys that are up here inside of the top 10. When they came down pit road, they came down with a group of 4. And remember last year, the season finale, when John Godfrey won that race, he came down pit road late with a group of 4. So we've actually had it proved here in the Tally Challenge. You don't have to come down with 10 or 12 drivers to be able to make up enough speed to stay up in the lead pack.
Absolutely not. And sometimes it's actually a little bit more detrimental to be coming in with a larger group of drivers because there's a lot of cars around you that are checking up and trying to position themselves for pit road entry before you quite get to pit road. So when you only have 2 or 3 other cars that you have to worry about, it tends to open up a lot more real estate for, if you make a mistake, if you do wheel hop, if you kick the rear end out a little bit, there's not cars all around you that you have to worry about getting into. So you can maybe take a little bit more of a chance with only 3 other cars coming in with you. And we've seen that, Seth, if you think about it, how many times have we seen already tonight in this race and then going back to last season when large groups of cars come into pit road at speed? That seems to be when we have our most incidents on pit road.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And we saw it there during that first round, about 5 or 6 drivers having some issues getting onto pit lane in those bigger groups that came down the second and third time of those laps of green flag pit stops. As we're actually starting to close in on what will be the second round. And one thing I've been taking note of here, we talk about how that middle groove is kind of the OP line. It's the line everybody migrates up to. Dave Cannon's been leading that outside line for the last 10, 15 laps. But Grant Wesley on the inside has always been able to get him at the start-finish line. Although Cannon has edged ahead a couple of times here in the corners, he's yet to lead a lap.
Yeah, and I think that might have something to do with it. It looks like the first 3 or 4 cars on that inside line, they're hooking up really well down the straightaways right now. And this is something that we've talked about in the past as well. The more cars that you can hook up together in a draft, the more speed that you can make down the straightaways. Now, I see Mark Paglia on the back bumper of that 003, and I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Metallic is hard on the back bumper of McClure as well. But I just don't think that those cars in that middle line are hooking up quite the way that the cars on the bottom line are. And I think that's why we're seeing Wesley with the advantage that he has right now on the backstretch.
Keep an eye on the leaders. We just had Chris Elliott, Chris Emery, and others hitting pit road, and we had a big group of cars come down the lap after they did on the first round, so I think we're going to see a lot of drivers migrate to pit road this time. Ooh, they're having some difficulty getting themselves situated at the front.
Cannon with a really aggressive move to the bottom, but Seth, I believe that it's because, yes, he is coming down onto pit road. It looks like we've got 6, 7, maybe even 8 cars. Grant Wesley makes a ton of time onto pit road. I can't believe that he made it down there on speed. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but with the advantage that Cannon seemed to have coming off of turn 4, Wesley had that much more of an advantage by the time they hit that pit line.
And I believe Jeremy Jeffries may have picked up about 2 or 3 positions. He was way down there near the pit road wall and was able to pass a couple of machines as a result. So taking advantage of it here on the entrance of pit road while he could.
Absolutely. And we did have a car that was on the inside infield grass through 1 and 2. It looked like Ken Roberts might have gotten just a little bit out of shape coming out of pit road. He rolled that grass all the way around the racetrack just to make sure he didn't interfere with anybody else that was pitting. But right now you see Wesley is making his way off of pit road. We look back to the other pack. They all make it in clean and green, being led by the 088 of Tim Nofsker. It looked like that first group, they got out on and off pretty well together. So assuming that this group can do the same thing, give it a couple laps, we'll see them all grouped up once again under green flag conditions.
Much cleaner formation here on this round of green flag pit stops. Very few drivers putting a tire out of place. As looks like Grant Wesley, well, I thought he was going to be the race leader, but there's a 3-car tandem behind him with Despirito, Seminara, and Jeffries. Add Shelton to that as well. So Wesley did get off pit road ahead of his competition. Oh,
and he's coming back on.
You called it.
Just like we talked about when we saw him going to pit road, Seth, it looks like Grant Wesley has been dinged for speeding onto pit lane. So that's going to be very costly for him. He is going to lose those leaders. He is very likely going to lose any drafting partners as well. So he's going to have to just buckle in here and hope that he can get himself a caution to get caught back up here. Right now, Joe DeSpirito leading the way again. It looks like Tim Knopfsker is technically still scored your leader, but they've got a pretty good breakaway going into turn number 3. Knopfsker, McClure, and the 39 of Metallic, but those 4 cars behind them, they're making probably easily 7-8 more miles per hour than the front 3 are. I wouldn't be surprised to see them move out of the tryoval.
Yeah, looks like Robbie Nices is coming to pit road. I think he got a penalty. I believe also the 3 of David Cannon has been called back to pit road for a speeding penalty. So a lot of drivers getting hit here late in this race with having to come down pit road, and subsequently for a few of them losing a lap as DeSpirito back to the point and going back there to Grant Wesley. He was a 3-time winner last year, won as early as race 2, but definitely right now in a bit of a situation. I'm also seeing, I don't know if this is true, but I'm seeing that it looks like the 77 of Donnie Garrett, who has cycled around to 9th place, looks like he might have been served with a black flag penalty.
Yeah, not quite sure unless it was speeding. And yes, here he comes. He will peel off down from the bottom of turn number 4 and head into the pits to serve his penalty as well. So it looks like they got a pretty large swath of drivers for speeding. Now, Seth, I know that you've run a lot of races as well, and I feel like probably anybody who has never done this, has never done it on a regular basis, you don't quite realize there is that sort of monkey see, monkey do effect as you work your way on the pit road. Yes, you're paying attention to your speeds. However, you are probably paying closer attention to the cars around you to avoid making contact, to avoid any incidents coming onto pit road. And when that happens, you start paying attention to those cars. If they're coming in at 3-4 miles an hour faster, chances are you're probably doing the same thing. So I wouldn't be surprised those 3 or 4 guys that we did see have to serve those penalties if it wouldn't be a case like that.
Well, I could tell you, personal experience, last Saturday, I was in a league race, came down pit road, it was Talladega, came down pit road with a group of 8, and you're right, I was so much more focused with not running over a car in front of me or giving room to a car beside me, I wasn't keeping an eye on my tachometer and ended up actually speeding on pit road. So it's so much that these drivers are asked to do as far as multitasking when they come down pit road with a big group of drivers.
Absolutely, and unfortunately for those guys, hopefully they can at some point catch a yellow flag. Obviously our leaders right now, they don't want to see a yellow flag, but anybody that was just dinged for speeding on the pits, they most certainly do. They would love to get caught back up here and, you know, have a chance to fight it out, because they are now, you know, within, I don't know, Seth, if you look at it with the penalties that they had to serve, they're easily a half a track or more behind these leaders right now too. So I would say it would probably be pretty safe to assume that I wouldn't be surprised if they find themselves fighting to keep themselves on the lead lap here toward the end of the race, assuming that it does stay green.
And just to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into this, well, these drivers, they've been able to make it onto pit road not once, but twice, been able to stay up in this lead pack, but their task isn't over. When they left pit road, they are still about 5 to 6 laps short of making it on fuel. So they're either going to have to do some major saving or have to come down pit road one more time before the conclusion of this one.
Right, and this time across the line, it will be 23 more laps remaining. So I don't think if you're the leader that you can really afford to be saving gas. As you know, when you're that car that's out front and you've got a pack of cars, you know, just ravenously trying to get by you behind you, you don't have a whole lot of time to lift. And any time that you lift on Talladega or any super speedway for that matter, you lose so much momentum. You can easily lose, if you look at this front pack right now, there are 12 cars in that front pack. And if you lift just a little too much or just a little bit too long, you can find yourself really, really far back on the racetrack, struggling to maintain a draft. So I think at this point, everybody's going to be that 5 or 6 laps short. They're either going to have to depend on a quick yellow flag or, you know, plan on with just 5 laps or so remaining in this race being on pit road again.
You know, Talladega, Daytona, the super speedways, a lot of times they bring about Cinderella stories. There's a couple of guys that are up in this lead pack we really haven't talked about tonight, and they're in this top 10. How about that white 616 of Jerm Lewis and the black 222 of Chris Emery right behind him? Both of these drivers up here together in this lead group, they've got a shot of picking up their first Tally Challenge win.
Absolutely. Richard Martin also running up there with those guys. Now, we did see the 222 of Chris Emery have a couple really strong runs last season, but more often than not, it was marred by bad luck and incidents out on the racetrack, not of his own doing. So it just kind of goes to show with the unpredictability of these super speedways, the endurance factor. You have to be there at the end of the race to compete for the win. And as you can see, these guys are very fast in the draft. They know what to do to keep themselves up there with those leaders. And if guys get racing hard enough, they could find themselves in contention for that win as well.
Right now, 11 lead lap cars in this lead group. An update of the fallout from that second round of green flag pit stops. Dave Cannon did indeed get a speeding penalty. He brought his car back down pit road and made the hard left-hand turn to the garage area. So it looks like he'll finish in 35th. Wayne Pribnow just went a lap down. Bob Dixon went a lap down as well. And right now, I think John Godfrey, who's a lap down, he and Pribnow currently hold the two lucky dog positions if we were to get a caution.
Absolutely. And you know those guys are hoping for that right now because these leaders are just so fast and so strong. They're not making any mistakes out on the racetrack. They're not making any mistakes on pit entry, on pit road, or pit exit. So, you know, for those guys to get caught back up, it is going to take a caution flag. And at this point in the race, Seth, I'm actually kind of questioning whether or not we are going to see that yellow flag come out. Just 20 laps to go. We know it's only about 14 or so more laps before everybody's going to have to hit pit road again, but these packs are spread pretty far out, and they can do a lot of racing with these cars without it being too congested.
I want to point something else out here as well that I meant to touch on earlier. It was announced during drivers' meeting. There were a few last season where races ended under the yellow flag. It actually was announced during drivers' meeting for the start of this new season that if we end up having a caution that ends the race under yellow, the driver responsible for that incident actually is going to have a penalty that carries over into the next week. Now, normally here, it's a 2-end park system where if you cause 2 incidents, you then have to bring your car to pit road and bring it to the garage area. But if you cause an incident that ends the race under yellow, the following week you go in with a 1 strike already. It's a 1-end park. So hopefully that kind of puts a little bit of fear into these drivers in the fact of, man, I don't want to have that penalty going into next week, and we may end up seeing a lot more of these races this season finish at the checkered flag.
Absolutely. And you know, that's not a fear tactic that the admins or race directors are trying to, you know, use against that driver or use against the drivers out on the racetrack. It's more of a fact of a majority of races over the last few seasons seem to have, you know, ended under a yellow flag without guys really having the shot to race it out toward the end, which kind of stagnates the finish. Yes, it's exciting if you're the winner, but at the same time, you know, it's not the finish under green that everybody's looking for. So it's more of an effort to try to clean up the end of the races a little bit than it is to, you know, try to punish anybody for it, which I really feel like needs to be said. Because sometimes, you know, at a glance, if you hear something like that, you'd be like, oh, wow, that seems really harsh, really cold. But no, when you have things like that happen, you know, they do anything that they can to try to up the competition level and make that competition level better, you know, week after week and season to season. So we'll see if it works out. Right now, as we know, this is Talladega. So I think, you know, it's a little harder, especially in a series like this, to predict something like that to happen. You know, you have a lot of incidents of bumper grab. You have a lot of incidents of 3 and 4 wide racing and just good hard racing as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see if that plays a factor at all throughout this season, but we'll just have to, it's something that we'll have to keep in the back of our minds and keep an eye on.
Gave you a little scan there through the entire field. Some drivers on the lead lap, some drivers a lap down, and 2 of the drivers you saw in that final group, Grant Wesley in the 88 and Donnie Garrett in the 77, who had to come down pit road for speeding penalties. Right now, still on the lead lap, Wesley in 21st, Donnie Garrett currently in 24th. And, you know, obviously we see with a system and a series like this, where it's Talladega week after week, an unpredictable super speedway, for some drivers, one season is going to be entirely different than another. And looking at that 43 of Richard Martin right now holding down the 5th position, if you go back to season 50, he was one of the final 4 competitors. But last year, he missed out on the playoffs, finishing overall in 15th place. So you can bet that based off of his performance of the last 2 years, this is a guy that wants to get it turned around and turned around early to try and get the early victory here in season 52.
Absolutely. And you know, that kind of goes back to speak to that anomalous season 51 of 2020 that we saw, where, you know, a lot of guys that we would be used to seeing up front and winning races and in the playoffs just didn't make it. That just speaks to the competition level out here. A lot of these guys are very competitive, very, very talented race car drivers, and it's not easy. You don't just get given these race wins. You have to really work for them. Right now, up front, it looks like the 712 of Bob Seminara, the 24 of Joe DeSpirito. They are no.
Oh! Jessica Shelton, Jeremy Jeffries get together in the tri-oval.
It looks like Seminara did lead them back across the line. I don't believe the 8 got too much damage, but Jessica Shelton did indeed back it hard into that tri-oval wall on the outside of the racetrack. Not quite sure what's touched that incident off. I didn't catch that,
Well,
Seth.
we'll go back and look at the replay, but just from the camera angle I saw when I looked at it live, when Jeffries made the move down to the inside, it looked like Joe DeSpirito went down there to block, and I think Shelton thought she was clear to be able to tuck in line behind the 24, and she just wasn't. That's what initially led to the contact between the 94 and the 8. We'll get a more in-depth look here with this caution coming out, but there's about maybe a half dozen drivers right now. They are breathing a sigh of relief because this caution may have just saved their race.
There was also a secondary incident at the end of the back stretch, as we just saw a lot of smoke and skid marks at the end of the back straightaway. It looked like as cars started to woe themselves down, maybe just a little bit of bumper grab from Donnie Garrett into the number 6, who went up into the 95 of Dave Earlywine. So another secondary incident, obviously not what Donnie Garrett needed to see, already being behind from the penalty on pit road.
We're going to see if we can get a better camera angle than what we saw when the incident occurred live. Now, if we watch here coming off of 4, you're going to see that Jeffries is down to the inside. DeSpirito's going to jump down there to try and block the advance of that inside line. And I think Shelton, I think she thought that she might be clear. She then came up back behind Bob Seminara. There might have been a tiny bit of bumper grab there because that 94 shot to the right awfully quickly. So I think it was a decision made, and then she changed her mind last minute, and then bumper grab kicked in.
Yeah, I think you're right, Seth, because from the angle that I am looking at it, angle number 2, I don't even see any contact between her and the 8 car. It looks like maybe the right front half of her nose just into the back end of Seminara. I didn't see the 712 twitch at all, but as you mentioned, it just cut hard to the left right down in front of the 8 car.
Take another look here, another angle. And yeah, to your point, there wasn't really, it didn't look like visible contact. It looked like some space there. So yeah, maybe a little bit of net code. And now the question I have, I mean, Jessica Shelton's been run up in the top 5 pretty much all night long, and now she's got that rear end damage. We've seen drivers, despite having back end damage, still be able to work their way back up through the field, but that was some pretty hard impact there.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see what her pit crew does here on pit road, whether they remove that back panel completely or not, because we have seen in the past drivers lose that back panel, and it really inhibits your ability to really get a good bump draft going, because drivers can't square up on you securely. So we'll have to see how much they can do to try to get that fixed up. I don't see too much damage on either side of the car. Obviously, the nose looking very good. So if they can get that back end squared away, she still has a chance. We've got enough time left in this race to, maybe be able to pull out a top 10, top 15 finish still.
There you see the hit, Mike Rogers, Dave Earlywine, as well as Billy Elliser, that follow-up wreck that you were talking about just moments ago. And boy, the drivers that this caution puts big smiles on their faces. Obviously, Grant Wesley and Donnie Garrett still remaining on the lead lap. They're going to be caught up here with the rest of the field. And the 2 drivers that are the recipients of the free pass under this caution are going to be John Godfrey and Wayne Pribnow.
Absolutely. So I do kind of wonder if we are going to have any of those cars that will stay out and take wave rounds. I believe the rule is an unlimited number of wave rounds are eligible, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll have to see if some of these drivers will kind of stay out here, because there's about another 10 laps still until we know everybody absolutely has to come down for fuel. So we'll see if these guys, maybe roll the dice a little bit, take that wave around and see if they get a quick yellow. But what this is also doing, Seth, we knew that these guys would be 5 or 6 laps short of making it to the end. This is probably going to cut this down by a couple laps. So maybe now only 3 or 4 laps short after this caution period.
Like 4 drivers are electing to take that wave around. Cy Jones, Glenn Harris, Wiley Coate, and Robbie Nisus. Now, for none of these drivers will this wave around put them back on the lead lap. For Nisus, this will put him at -1. Same for Coate, same for Harris, and same for Cy Jones. These were drivers that were 2 laps down at the time of that yellow flag, so they're going to have to rely on a little bit more help, as we did have some drivers that came down pit road. At the same time, we had a couple of drivers, I guess, that decided track position was a little bit more important.
Absolutely. And we saw Despirito stay out. We saw the 088 of Nofsker stay out, the 39 of Metallic. Now, personally, I don't, Seth, what call would you have made here? If it's you in that driver's seat, what call would you have made? Because I feel like this puts drivers at this point, knowing that they're only going to be about 3 laps short, in a very sort of awkward position, because you can come in, top off, know that you're going to be good, or now knowing that you're going to bunch the field back up again, there is a chance that another caution or 2 could still fall before the end of this race. Now, if we get 1 caution, they're probably still going to be a little bit short. However, if we get 2 cautions, it is conceivable. We saw Grant Wesley in the 88 do it last season, that you could stretch it out under yellow and try to bring it home on fumes.
It is possible, but I'm telling you what, if I'm up inside that top 10 when that caution flies, I'm coming to pit road, no questions asked. The reason for that is you don't know for absolute certain you're going to get that second caution to be able to save. These drivers, when they came to pit road, they were going to be about 4.5 laps short on fuel. So, at this point in time, I think they're still going to have to come to pit road at some point. And with that being said, let's say we have another caution come out maybe within the next 1 or 2 laps of going green. You come down pit road, you were the race leader, now you're mired all the way back in the 20th position. I just think that that's a little bit of a risky strategy. You've been up front all day, up inside the top 5. Come down pit road. You've got the number 1 pit stall if you're Joe Despirito as well to your advantage. So if I were that 24, I'd have been down pit road on this last lap.
However, that also opens up the opportunity, if you find yourself back in the mid to back of the pack from pitting there, if there is a major incident, that you could still get caught up in that, assuming that, your leaders would be a little bit more safe. But that's also a silly notion to make, considering how many accidents have we seen that have taken out leaders toward the front of the pack. I believe it was, race number 14 last season, before the final race of the season that determined the championship, where just about all of our championship competitors who had been running up front got into incidents that started up front.
Yep, exactly. Now, in the case of Despirito here, just based off of another race that we called last season, let's say he's been able to save, let's give him a maximum of 2 laps here under this caution period. That means he'd be about maybe 2.5 laps short. Now, last year, we ended up seeing a caution come out right around the point where, with the caution coming out, the race would enter yellow. Grant Wesley was the leader at the time, and because they were running the 70, 75 mile per hour pace laps, he was able to save enough under those 3 pace laps to be able to make it to the start-finish line. So we could have that scenario here for some of our front runners as well.
It's absolutely very conceivable it could happen. However, we will have to see how this plays out. Coming down into the tri-oval, you're going to see that Dodge Challenger pace car dive down onto pit road. When they come out of the tri-oval to take that green flag, there will be 11 laps remaining here tonight. I think, Seth, we've seen a lot of really good racing, but I think we're about to see things get really, really intense as we go back green flag racing.
Business is going to pick up, no doubt about that. Despirito and Nofsker lead us down, with Josh Metallic, Bob Seminara, and Jeremy Jeffries the top 5. 11 laps to go. We'll see if these guys up at the front can make it on fuel. We'll see how hard charging those guys mid-pack to rear the field are going to be.
Now, I saw something very, very interesting there on that restart, Seth. We saw Despirito get a good jump. We saw Nofsker also with a good jump. The 39 of Josh Metallic looked like he may have given Tim room to duck down into the inside line with those guys. Nofsker opted not to take it. That's going to now shuffle him back to the 3rd car on the outside line. in the course of a half of a lap. He went from the outside front row to the third car on the outside line. Josh Metallic, Jeff Crivello, they're now going to challenge the number 24 on the inside line, coming off of turn 4, heading into the tri-oval.
What a difference a caution makes. Jeff Crivello was in the third group under that green flag run. Hank Middleton was back in the fifth group, and now the two of them are up here vying for spots inside the top 5.
10 more laps to go, and we see names up toward the front that we haven't really talked about at all in the last about half of the race now, because like you mentioned, everybody got split up by those green flag pit stops, but everybody now running really, really hard. As you see Middleton now up to that 5th position on the inside line. He's going to be looking for just a little bit more. He's all over the 56's back end, but it doesn't look like Crivello's giving that same love to the rear bumper of the 39. That's going to hurt that inside line through the corner.
We're double wide back around to the 15th, 16th position, but then they're 3 wide, 4 wide. Donnie Garrett gets put up into the outside wall. That was McClure in the middle of that. I think Doug Woolley, Richard Martin as well.
Yep, they're still 4 wide as they work on sorting themselves out there. Not quite sure what happened with the 77 of Garrett. He looked like he was up to speed in the line that he was running, and then all of a sudden went to the outside line and absolutely got freight trained by guys that were already 3 wide behind him. So now you look up just a little bit farther. Chuck McClure running Mark Paglia's number 28. He is making a run on that third line on the outside, but we are only about 4 more laps away from green flag pit stops, assuming we don't get a yellow. Joe DeSpirito comes down hard across the front end of the 39. That really broke the momentum of that inside line.
Still 3 wide. That's a couple. Actually, that's 3 Mustangs all side by side with Farrell on the bottom, Embry in the middle, and McClure on the top. We've got 3 wide, about 5, maybe 6 rows deep. Ooh, getting a little squirrely in the middle there was Jerm Lewis in the 616. He was able to hang on to it. That's one of the lightest parts of the racetrack there through the tri-oval.
Oh, we
got a wreck.
Rodney Sullins looked like his engine exploded heading down into turn 1. Car kicked sideways. Cars caught up behind them. The yellow flag is going to come out, but we are still racing to the line as the 8 car gets put into the outside wall.
And they're still wrecking. Donnie Garrett up and over there on the back straightaway.
Up and over, we've got 4 cars involved there. Metallic now on the inside line, still racing back to that yellow flag. Jeff Crivello looks to have a little bit of an advantage over the 24 of Joe DeSpirito heading into the tri-oval.
Now we will get back green flag racing with the timing of this caution, so there will be yet another restart, but there are going to be a lot of torn up cars when we get that restart. Metallic is going to lead them back to the start-finish line over Crivello. I think DeSpirito may have just edged out Hank Middleton for 3rd. Middleton will be 4th with Nofsker in 5th, but a lot that we're going to have to cover here under this run. There were 4 wide situations in a couple areas of the field that led to the incident, not only over in turn 1, but also the incident over there on the back straightaway.
Absolutely. A lot to sift through to see exactly what happened. Like I said, I believe the initial yellow came out. I saw a puff of smoke before I saw the 030 or the 38 of Sullins get sideways. So like I said, I believe he may have had a motor let go, which really triggered a chain reaction behind him. We'll have to look back at that. But now there are 7 laps to go. There will be 6 across the line, as you mentioned, Seth. We will be going back green flag, definitively. So the question is do the leaders that are out front, can they securely save enough to make it to the end of the race, or do they all have to come down pit road and pit?
Yeah, that's going to be the big question here. I think that if you were drivers that came down under the last yellow, I think you're good to go, because they were about, 12 to go at that time when they came down pit lane, and we know they can make it about 20 laps on fuel. Those other drivers, though, as you said, the second caution might have saved them. They might be able to save enough to be able to make it to the end, and it looked like the contact that led to that wreck over in turn 1, I think it started with the 36 of Jack DeSalt. He just wasn't able to hold the bottom, and he got up into the 38 of Rodney Sullins. We'll take another camera angle at it, but we had multiple cars involved there. Perry Bond in the 60, Robbie Nices in the 54, Dave Melson in the 038, also the 08 of Glenn Harris.
And just to note, the pit road was open that time by none of the leaders attempted to come down and top off on green flags. So either they're confident that they can make it to the end of this race now with only 6 laps to go. I believe it'll be about a 2-lap shootout here at the end of the race. So, Seth, now I have to wonder, how low are these guys on fuel? Because unless there's another really quick yellow flag, we could run into cars running out of gas in the middle of the back straightaway or coming out of turn 4 on the last lap of the race.
And we've had that happen before. The car that we're going to be watching here with this replay of what happened on the back straightaway, Donnie Garrett, I remember that there was a race in the closing stages. He went up all the way to the extreme outside line. I thought he was making a 4-wide move at the time, but he told me after the race he was running out of fuel. So you're right. That is definitely a scenario we could see play out here. Looks like it was only 2 cars in this incident. The 77 of Donnie Garrett and the car that actually sent him up into the air, the 26 of Billy Elliser. And that was right in the middle of a big group of cars. So it's amazing it was only a 2-car incident. And I think that 77 is all right. He landed back on all 4 wheels.
Yep, and I believe what that was a product of, if you look back one more time on that replay, Seth, and look at the 8 of Jeffries and the 28 of Chuck McClure, I believe there may have been just a little bit of contact that sent the 8 car of Jeffries into that outside wall, causing the chain reaction, which saw Donnie Garrett flying up into the air. But as you mentioned, his car doesn't look like it's too beat up. It doesn't look like he's really too concerned about it, so he could still be a threat here toward the end of the race.
Came down, landed on that right rear quarter panel. Now, he did hit the inside wall with the front end of that race car, and there's always that kind of gray area, depending on how hard the hit is, on whether your car is going to be good in the draft and be able to work your way through the field, or if you do have engine problems. We'll follow up on that here when we get ready for this shootout, but Donnie Garrett was a driver who had just been able to catch back up to the lead pack after the timing of the last caution, was fighting his way up through the field, collected up in that one, and 2 drivers that are going to get back in the lead lap because of this caution looks like are going to be the 143 of Bob Dixon and the 055 of Ken Roberts. Now, with 2 laps to go, obviously I don't think this is going to put them back in the hunt for the race win, but it certainly is going to put them back in a position to finish higher than they would have.
Absolutely. Whenever you're still running, you've still got a shot, especially if you're on the lead lap. If a big melee breaks out in front of you and takes out half the field, that could easily move you up 10, 15, sometimes even 20 spots, Seth, as you know. So there are still positions to be gained here. We'll just have to see how it works out for those 2 drivers as they work their way down toward the checkered flag. Right now, 5 laps to go. We are still under yellow flag. It looks like drivers are anticipating to get the 1 to go next time by, as we see the 055 of Roberts as well as the 143 of Dixon working their way around the outside of the field, putting themselves in position. It looks like Roberts may have gone just a little bit too early there, but I think Roberts is a little bit newer to this series as well, so he may not realize that he wasn't supposed to go quite yet. But Seth, it's still in the back of my mind. I know that there are cars toward the back of the pack under the last yellow that did come and top off on fuel. However, there weren't many cars from the front that did. So does this put everybody on pretty even playing field? And are they actually going to have enough to make it back to the checkered? If another yellow flag comes out, I say yes. But if it stays under green, I'm really questioning it at this point.
Yeah, it's really going to be close. There's no doubt about that. Now we know that when drivers run out of fuel off of turn 4, I think if they're at fuel pressure 9, I think they do have enough power to be able to make it down to the start-finish line, even though the start-finish line is down between the trial and turn 1. But if they're down around fuel pressure 5 or 6 coming off of turn 4, yeah, I think they're in real big trouble. But these guys up here, they're willing to run the risk, as Josh Metallic is going to be the one to get us back underway. Jeff Cravella will line up second. Joe Despirito has led the most laps tonight, 37, but he's now in third. Hank Middleton fourth, Chris Elliott in fifth. Top 10 will be completed by Tim Nofsker, Bob Seminara, Bernie Mobbs, Richard Martin, and Jeremy Jeffries. Chuck McClure up there in that 28. He's in 11th. Jerm Lewis in 12th. Bobby Farrell 13th. 14th will be Grant Wesley. 15th, Doug Woolley. Chris Emery in 16th. John Godfrey now up in 17th. Wayne Pribnow, Sonny Tallman, and Jessica Shelton now the top 20. Rest of the drivers on the lead lap: Donnie Garrett, Billy Elliser, Jack DeSalt, Perry Bond, Rodney Sullins, Mike Rogers. Those were the drivers that were on the lead lap prior to this caution. That's down to 26th. Ken Roberts and Bob Dixon, they get the free passes in 27th and 28th. We've got lap down machines of Cy Jones, Wiley Coate, Glenn Harris, Robbie Nisus, and Dave Melson. That's down to 33rd. Another driver did go back into the garage area between the last caution and this one. That is Dave Earlywine. He'll finish 34th. Dave Cannon and Manny D also retired out of the race early on in this one. They finished 35th and 36th, and that's the finishing results we have currently here, as we're going to have, it looks like 3 laps to go when we go back green.
There are going to be 3 laps to go at the line when they go back green flag racing. Now, Seth, that only increases my level of concern at this point. I was worried about if they would have enough gas left in the tanks with 2 coming to a green flag with 2 to go. Now, we're adding another lap on top of that even, which, in the pit of my stomach tells me I think we are probably going to see some guys that are going to run out of gas here before the end of this race.
But, I mean, at this point, you're committed. There's nothing else you can do. You've made your bed. You got to lie in it. And we look at someone here like Josh Metallic. We talked about it at the beginning of this race. A guy that made it into the playoffs, was eliminated in the first round, and did not find victory lane last season. It's another of those drivers that maybe didn't perform quite the way they expected last year, and they want to turn it around here with the start of this season.
Absolutely. A week number 1 race win would be humongous for anybody right at this point. But, for a guy like Josh Metallic, who wasn't able to get to victory lane last season, that would be even more sweet. But I'm going to tell you right now, Seth, watch out for that number 2 car restarting in that 4th position. Don't sleep on Hank Middleton. Green flag is out. We now have 3 more laps to go. Josh Metallic and Jeff Crivello side by side. Middleton giving a great push to Crivello. Going to give him the clear advantage heading off into turn 1.
Next flag will end the race, whether it be the caution or the white flag. They got to make 2 more laps before they see the flagman with the white flag in his hand. Metallic edges out in front for the moment. Does he stay down with the Spirito or jump up to the high side? Seems committed for the moment to the bottom, but that top side's coming. Crivello, big shove from Hank Middleton down the back stretch.
Absolutely, and I don't think Metallic could move up the racetrack if he wanted to at this point. I don't think if Jeff Crivello is going to give up that middle line, and rightly so, as we've seen how dominant that it can be. They come out of turn 4, still clean and green. Some cars 3 wide toward the back of the field, into the trioval, still side by side. Crivello not relenting, not wanting to give that up to Metallic. Metallic will lead this time by with 2 to go.
Remember, this is the first race of the season, but on the line, even as early as now, if you win this race, you run the final 10 races of the regular season knowing you're going to battle for the championship. All these drivers want that security blanket here to try and get this checkered flag to kick off season 52. Still, the inside line gets the advantage off of 2, then the top side gets the run down the back straightaway again. Here's a third line forming, Jeremy Jeffries and Grant Wesley.
Now I have to question, will they have enough help up there? As we see now, Wayne Pribnow, Jessica Shelton, who we mentioned was in that big wreck before, has found her way back up toward the front into the trioval. Crivello trying to make another run at Metallic with help from Hank Middleton, but no help to the rear end of Hank Middleton. That middle line going to fall off just a little bit. White flag across the line. 3 wide, Jeffries working the outside, Crivello in the middle, Metallic in the bottom, heading off into turns 1 and 2.
All bets are off. 2.66 miles to decide the first winner of season 52. Metallic edges ahead. Despirito behind him. Metallic leaves the door open. Despirito wanted to go low, couldn't do it. Will he get a push maybe here from the second or third line? Is that where he'll go? I think Metallic's going to hug that yellow line for all it's worth.
Unfortunately, it looks like that middle line no longer going to be a factor. The race going to be between those front 2 right now. Working off of turn number 4, Metallic slides up the racetrack just a little bit. Despirito on his back bumper. Despirito now looking high into the trioval. Who is Metallic going to have help from? It looks like through the trioval, Metallic is going to be able to hold it across the line for the win.
Half a car length, Josh Metallic is the winner of the season opener of the season 52 RTG Tally Challenge. He got the help there through the trial from Chris Elliott, able to hold off the duo of Despirito and Seminara coming to the start-finish line. And Josh Metallic, he went an entire season on a winless streak, but finally snaps it here tonight.
big trouble after they came across the start finish line. Looked like a little bit of bumper grab sent McClure down to the inside of the racetrack, starting a huge melee through the first and second corners. Fortunately, the race was all over at that point, so nothing really counted as far as all that is concerned. But after going a whole season and all the frustration that Josh Metallic dealt with last season, he is locked into the playoffs here after race number 1 of season number 52 with the Tally Challenge.
And gets that sense of security. As I said, he'll run the next 9 races knowing that as long as he stays in the top 20 in points, he will be one of our 10 playoff contenders, as he's going to bring it down here in front of these Talladega fans and burn it down at the start-finish line. But my goodness, you wondered if they could make it on fuel. I didn't see anybody that looked like they were sputtering coming off of turn 4 and down this straightaway, so they must have been able to save an awful lot of fuel under the pace laps of those late 2 cautions.
Absolutely. Between clutching it and running it around in 4th gear, they were able to get the job done. Josh Metallic burning the tires off of that car just a little bit in front of the start finish line. He's going to maintain that burnout, try to take it all the way down into turn number 1. Big win for Josh after going surprisingly winless and being eliminated in playoffs round number 1 last season. Finishing out your top 5 tonight, looks like we're going to have Joe DeSpirito, Chris Elliott, Bob Seminara, Jeff Crivello with a really strong 5th place finish. Looking a little bit farther back, Richard Martin, Jeremy Jeffries, Jerem Lewis, Grant Wesley, Chuck McClure will unofficially round out your top 10 here tonight. Seth, what a great race. I think we got a little bit worried with as strung out as it got throughout the middle portion of that race, but it got really, really racy there toward the end.
It definitely did. And, just kind of going back to that whole ruling that they had about if he caused an incident that ends the race under yellow, they were 3 wide, 4 or 5 rows deep coming to the start finish line. As you said, they waited until after the start finish line to wreck. So that led about to a really good finish. And boy, it got close there at the line when DeSpirito made that move, and I saw Seminara go up there with him. I wondered about Chris Elliott. Would he be able to get up there to the back bumper of Metallic in time to keep him ahead? And he was certainly able to do so. And I know I'm looking at a lot of these names here as well. Obviously, everybody in the field is capable of winning a race, but, if that doesn't happen, all these guys that start out the season with top 5s and top 10s, they may be also looking, if they can't find victory lane, to make sure they're one of those drivers that point their way into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to start it off. As you mentioned earlier tonight, like you said, Jerem Lewis was having a great one. He ends up pulling out a top 10, finishing in 8th. Jeff Crivello pulls out a top 5, finishing in 5th. Richard Martin, 6th. Chris Elliott running 3rd. These are all guys that we know are very fast. And when they can make it to the end of the race, which most of these cars did, they can really showcase their talents. So it'll be good to see if these guys can really keep that momentum up and maybe even get a few new names into the playoffs here toward the end of the season number 52.
And a comeback story there in 9th place with Grant Wesley, a driver that had to come back down pit road under green flag conditions for a speeding penalty. That caution, that second yellow flag saved him. He got back with the lead group, still on the lead lap, and still able to salvage out a top 10 run.
Absolutely. And that's just the sort of run that these guys want to have to start off your season. I mean, I really believe if you finish anywhere in the top 20 in race number 1, it is not the worst start to a season that you can have, especially considering we had a car count of 37 drivers tonight. Assuming we keep getting those numbers back throughout the remainder of the season, just for race number 1, as long as you pulled out a top 20, I still think that you've got yourself in pretty comfortable contention moving forward.
Well, a driver that really started out the season well gets a top 5 here tonight. 3rd place is Chris Elliott. Let's get a word with him. Hey, Chris, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Zach and Seth, my man, how y'all doing? Come on.
Well, man, I mean, last season we saw you get a top 5, but only one. Actually, I'm sorry, you got 2 last season. You finished runner-up in the season opener last year. You finished 3rd in the season opener here this season. I mean, man, it looks like starting out the season you're really good, but how about trying to keep that momentum up through the remainder of the season?
Well, we're starting off good, and I got to say something. This orange Chester Cheetah number 9 Dodge was really fast right off the hauler. The new paint scheme for this race, and it was fast all night.
You know, we saw you up there in the thick of it there in the closing stages. You had a decision to make there through the tri-oval. 24 was on the top, 39 was on the bottom. Was it kind of a last-minute decision, or were you committed to trying to help push Metallic to the start-finish line?
I was going to stay with him and push him. You know, it was the low line got a good run there to the end. I'm going to stay right there unless he pulled out high. I'm going to stay low. But it all worked out. Top three, we're excited.
Hey, Chris, great to talk to you. It's Zach up here in the booth. Hey, man, your Cheetos car is giving me the munchies all night long. Such a sharp, good-looking car. Match that up with a sharp, really good-looking race. Top three, how much confidence does this give you? Because it's got to be a really good shot in the arm, especially for race number one, knowing that you had some struggles around mid-season last year with incidents out there on the racetrack and getting caught up in things that weren't your own fault. How much confidence does this give you heading towards week number 2 and beyond?
Oh, it gives us a big confidence. I think it always does when you have a good race. You hit all your marks. You do everything right. You stay away from wrecks, and it's huge confidence. And yeah, this paint scheme, everybody seems to like it. I got to thank Mr. Rodney Sellens for the paint. But yeah, we're flying high. We feel really good about this first week for sure.
Absolutely. Now, moving forward, you know that you can contend with those big names, the Joe DeSpiritos, the Bob Simoneras, you know, all the guys that were just absolutely dominant last season. What is it going to take to get you to victory lane? Because we know you're close. You know you're close. It's just a matter of time at this point, right?
I think so. You just got to be patient. You know, I think I've heard that more from everybody, being patient, learn to drive with these guys that got all this experience, and I think I'm getting there. So, but yeah, just keep what I'm doing, do what I'm doing, and stay out of trouble. You know.
Right on, Chris. Great to talk to you, man. Really good showing tonight. It's good to see you running really well. Love seeing you up there doing well. Shout outs, thank you, sponsors. What do you got for us tonight?
All right, first of all, yeah, I want to say a shout out and send prayers out to Mark Packley. His wife's having surgery today, this week or something like that, and we're all thinking about him for sure. I want to thank Chris Emery and Hank Middleton tonight. They drove really good with me tonight, and congratulate Josh for the super race he ran tonight, and everybody. It was a wonderful race, and all my fans out there might be listening to me, here watching me on YouTube, and that's about it. Thanks.
That's Chris Elliott. He's going to bring it home third place here tonight in the season opener. A great start to his season here in season 52. Congratulations, Chris. We look forward to seeing what you do next week. Hopefully you can carry some momentum on.
All right, let's hope so. Thanks, guys.
And let's see if we can now get our second place finisher, the defending champion, Joe DeSpirito. Hey, Joe, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Hey, guys, I got you. How you doing?
Man, you led the most laps tonight, 34. Came down to a 3-lap shootout, and you made a move there through the tri-oval. Came down to about a half a car length. What little more do you think you needed to be able to edge Metallic at the line to get the season opening win?
I had to do it earlier in the race before that last caution. I was kind of trapped on the bottom there for those last 3 laps, and my only option was kind of to push Josh to the win there. And I'm glad he won. That was good for him. Yeah, I jumped outside late there. I didn't have enough help. If the 9 went with me, maybe, but yeah, I didn't have enough track left to win that race there at the end. But before that caution, I had Josh clear, and I made the move, and I cleared him, and I couldn't hold it on the bottom. So he kept that line, and that was kind of the race right there.
Second caution of the night coming out there in the second half, and we knew you guys were going to be maybe a little bit short on fuel if this thing had gone green to the end. You and a number of other drivers did not come down pit road. You ended up getting another caution to be able to save fuel. How close were you guys of possibly running out on that final 3-lap shootout?
Oh, I don't even know. I shut the fuel gauge off. I wasn't even looking. I was just racing at that point. If it was close, I don't even know, to be honest.
Hey, Joe, it's Zach. Good to talk to you, man. No stranger to talking to you, you know, during the season, you know, for these podium finishes. You've already set the bar. You've already won the first pole of the season. Last season, we saw you take home 11 pole positions. You've already got the first race of the season. You finished second place. So now I've got to put you on the spot, and I'm going to do it because I know that you hate it when I do it. So I'm going to do it anyway. Are you going to wait until the playoffs to get your first win again this season? Because with a run like you had tonight, man, I didn't know if you had anything for that 39 car or not, but I know that you were clearly dominant the entire rest of the race, and I wouldn't have been surprised if you'd have pulled it out. But what kind of things are you looking forward to? Because I know it can't be a comfortable position to be in when you sit the whole season. Yeah, you're at the top of the points standings. It's great. You're having good wins, you're good runs, but you're really wanting to win those races. Is one of your goals this season to try to get yourself one of those wins prior to the playoffs this year?
Yeah, it's always to, just at least grab one. Locks you in the playoffs. It gets you that relief where you don't have to worry about anything else. You're locked in. I tried last year and I couldn't get it in the regular season. But yeah, I'm hoping to grab one in the regular season this year. We'll see how it goes, though. I was close tonight. Hopefully, give it a shot again next week. But I definitely like to get one this year in the regular season for sure. Yep.
And your thoughts on trying to three-peat. What do you think that is? Because I know last season you were afraid that I was going to jinx you on the championships and the wins and everything like that, but you were able to pull it off. Confidence levels coming off the last 2 seasons now with a couple championships, a couple really strong runs. Number 3, is it this year? Is it this season? 52.
I'm going for it, man. I'm going to go for the third in a row. It'll be my drive for 5, trying to get my 5th championship. I had the chance for the three-peat in season 46 and I choked, so hopefully here in season 52 I don't do that. I'm going to try, man. I'm going to give it everything I can. Just driving hard, racing hard, rinse and repeat. That's my motto. Same thing every night. Try to get the pole, try to lead the most laps, try to win the race. That's it. Try to get those W's.
Right on, Joe. Congratulations on a solid finish. Always great talking to you, man. Shout outs. Thank you, sponsors. What do you got for us tonight?
First off, I wanted to give a shout out to Mark Paglia and his wife. I hope everything goes well for her. I want to give a shout out to my guys that I run with, APW Racing, FTMF Mobs Motors. I give a shout out to Josh running a great series here on Thursday night. RTG. Give a shout out to FRN. You guys do a great job as always. And just like I said, the whole league in general. This is the best place to race. I appreciate it, guys. Have a good night.
That is Joe DeSpirito. Last season, he didn't have a regular season finish outside of the top 5. We'll see if he'll be able to keep that streak going as he starts out season 52 with a second place run here this evening. Congrats, Joe.
Thanks, guys.
And down to victory lane we go. Let's get a word with our race winner tonight, Josh Metallic. Hey, Josh, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
I got you.
Well, man, I got to wonder about the sense of relief you're feeling here tonight when you put that number 39 Air Force Ford Mustang across the start-finish line P1. We'd have to go all the way back to July 2nd of last year, race 9 of season 50, since you've been to victory lane. A long winless streak, but you finally snap it here tonight. What were the emotions as you brought that machine to the start-finish line?
Oh, man, I've been trying so hard for so long. And for the first time in forever, I actually used the 2-week break to try fixing my qualifying, because I'm always 9th, 10th, 11th. And I come out and I lay an egg. I went slower. After all that work, I went slower in qualifying. Still was, good spot. But yeah, coming to the end, I saw they went 3 wide and the second and third lanes faded. And I knew, I was like, oh, great. If Joe can get a corner panel, his nose on my quarter panel, I can't really block him at that point. So I was hoping we'd stay kind of 2 wide, keep him pinned in. But I knew 3 wide would come eventually. And when they faded, I started to worry that he was going to sucker me into, a block or something and sneak by. I mean, he's only won I don't know how many races in the last 6 months. So it's the one guy you don't want in your mirror when you're trying to break a winless streak. But yeah, it worked out. Finally.
It's incredible how back-to-back seasons in a series such as this, where it's a super speedway, the same super speedway every single week. Last year you ended up having to rely on consistent finishes since you didn't get to victory lane to point your way into the playoffs. But here tonight, with winning this race, you now know that as long as you stay in the top 20 in the point standings for these next 9 races, you're going to be battling in the playoffs. So now what's the mentality here in these upcoming 9 races, knowing that you've got a playoff spot already locked up?
Well, it's trying to get more of them. I mean, it's like I said, it's been so long since I got one. I'm hoping maybe I can get some of the luck that Tim or Jeremy or even Joe gets when you win one. You start ripping them off one after another. So it'd be nice to keep that going. But the chase is based on points too, so I don't want to do anything too crazy strategy wise, and drop in the points. You still want to be up there points wise, because those basically are wins too. Every position in the points is extra points going into the chase, so it's still the same thing. Race is for the best finish you can, but yeah, you can be a little more aggressive now that you got that in your back pocket.
Josh, congratulations, man. It's good to see you back in victory lane. I can finally stop talking about you on the racetrack and how you just, you usually win, but you haven't been. You are no longer that guy as you were able to pull it off tonight. So now I have to ask you the same thing that Seth asked Joe just a moment ago, but Joe said that he wasn't looking. He stopped looking, didn't want to worry about it. We knew that guys were going to be a little bit short coming down toward the end of the race, especially if it ended up under green. Do you have any idea how short you were on fuel? Obviously, you had enough to get yourself to the finish, but how low were you?
I was good. We pitted. Gosh, I think I was like a lap or so to the good. I have to go back and double check when I last stopped, but whether or not it was going to make it, I was going to stay out there and either pray for a yellow to pull one of Grant's signature wins under caution, coasting all around. But yeah, the way the yellows fell, there was one late and another one after that, and I got a can's all it needed, and I was good to go after that. But yeah, I wasn't even watching my F3 near the end. I wasn't watching F2. Wasn't watching anything but my rear view mirror.
Your rear view mirror. And I'll tell you what, even though you were fighting to maintain that victory, there was a lot of good, hard battling happening behind you as well, with 37 cars on the field tonight. There was a lot of really good, hard, clean racing, a lot of give and take that we do see on a regular basis, but maybe amplified a little bit more with the implementation of the rule that tries to prevent cautions at the end of the race. Now, I know that's sort of a point of emphasis because that's not just for this series, that goes across for the whole league. Now, do you see that kind of because something that Seth and I talked about is it tends to be a little bit different at super speedways than it does at a normal short track or an intermediate track or anything like that, where as tight as the racing is on these super speedways, it doesn't take a whole lot to bring out that yellow. Do you feel that that's now kind of been planted in the back of these guys' mind and kind of what led us to seeing this race end under yellow or end under green, not to mention a 3-wide finish at the line?
If I'm being honest, I'll say no, because I tell you what, I went over the rules. I know, most of them on like the back of my hand. I've forgotten all about the driver's meeting and everything I said. The only thing I was thinking of was, can I push this guy one more time on the, before getting into the turn? Can I block this? I think when you're in the heat of the moment, right there at the end, whatever was discussed in the driver's meeting, that was old news. It's not even for me. It wasn't even in my brain. So, I would have totally caused a wreck. And if I had, and I wouldn't even realize, oh crap, I can't qualify next week, or I don't want him parked. So I think it's good. I think as people get used to it and penalties get handed out for it, maybe people will remember it. But tonight, man, I was racing so darn hard, trying to get up there, and finally got there, and I didn't even have a thought as to if I cause a wreck, what's my penalty next week. It was all about right here, right now.
Right on, man. Well, it worked out well for you. It's really good to see you in victory lane again. We've all known it was a long time coming. And what do you got for shout outs, thank you, sponsors tonight?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to say we're thinking of Mark Paglia and his family. I know they're dealing with a rough patch right now. We're really anxious to get him back, being able to run and have fun with us again. But definitely want to give a shout out to him. I saw he was in the chat earlier, so if he's around, we want to say hello to him. We're thinking about him. I want to thank you guys. I know you guys did a lot of work with us in the off season to keep this broadcast thing going, and I was a little leery at the beginning. I'm like, man, every race broadcast, I don't know. You guys are awesome. It's fun. I love going back and rewatching them the next day or that following weekend. You guys you're the best. Thanks to Bones. He had a good race tonight until pit stop trouble. Terry Bauman, Sean Prime, the owners. Wiley, my fellow admin, helping me out. And then also want to say thanks to Joe at the end. He could have raced me. He could have. I think he could have made it more difficult than he did. We want a clean race. Maybe he was thinking that rule about wrecking and that new rule, but it was not in my mind at the time. But thanks to Joe for pushing. Jeff Crivello, he pushed me right before that. And then right at the end, Chris Elliott, when Joe made that move, I'd have been toast if Chris wasn't there. And lastly, thanks to the drivers, 37 cars. We had 1 or 2 pit mishaps, 2 wrecks. You've seen 37 car fields, what can turn out. And this is a damn good race. It was not just because of where I ended up, but I had fun the whole time and hard racing. It was good. I appreciate it.
Well, in 9 weeks' time, we are going to know who 10 drivers will be the battle for the championship. And one that we know here tonight is the season opening winner, Josh Metallic. Congratulations, Josh, not only on that win here tonight, but being able to snap that winless streak. Great to see you back in victory lane. Go and enjoy your victory.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
And I know I sound like a broken record, but, just seeing Josh Metallic go to victory lane here tonight after everything we documented prior to this race last season with him trying to find victory lane and not being able to do it. In a tally challenge season, you cannot really look at the statistics, look at the finishing results from last season or 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago, because it always constantly changes.
Absolutely. It always constantly changes. However, if you also think back, I'm going to go ahead and play devil's advocate on that on you, Seth. If you think back, had Josh Metallic been able to secure a victory last season during the regular season prior to that round number 1 of the playoffs, it also may have given him enough bonus points to advance into round number 2. So you have to take those points where you can get them from, and anytime you have an opportunity to capitalize on a real good run, you absolutely need to take that opportunity to do so. And I got to imagine with Josh winning this race number 1 of season 52 here, Seth, I have a feeling it's not the last time that we're going to see him in victory lane this season.
I think you might very well be right. So now the stage is set for all these different drivers. They've kind of had the bar set, whether it be high, whether it be low here to start out the year. Now for some drivers that ran well, they're going to try and keep that consistency up. For drivers that struggled here tonight, they're going to try and climb their way up. So you're going to have several different drivers with several different agendas all in close proximity here for these next 9 weeks.
Absolutely. And that's just kind of the way it goes. We saw that a lot, especially coming to the closing stages of the regular season last year and all throughout the playoffs. There's just, with the format, the playoff format in this series and the unpredictability factor, and I know that's something we sound like broken records saying week after week after week with this Tally Challenge series, but there is such an unpredictability factor when you come into every single race, because there are so many different scenarios that could play out. There's so many different things that could happen that nothing is guaranteed to you, no matter where you are out on the racetrack. So again, I think week number 1 is in the books, but already you need to be thinking ahead to the last week of the regular season to make sure that where you are now is in a spot that is viable to work yourself into the playoffs at the end of the regular season.
Who is going to join Josh Metallic in the postseason? We're going to be finding out the next answer to that next week for race number 2 here of season 52. Just once more to echo all the sentiments we've been hearing here with these post-race interviews and everything as well. We just want to continue to send out our thoughts and prayers to Mark Paglia, his wife, and the rest of their family. We hope to see him back out here on the track soon. Chuck McClure doing a great job here tonight in that 28, bringing it home in the 10th position. And Zach, a new season's begun. Appreciate you joining me in the booth. Looking forward to finishing this one out.
Absolutely, Seth. I'm excited to be on board once again here this season. Look forward to working with you the rest of the season as well as all of the drivers. Thank you, Seth, everybody at FRN, all the owners, admins, drivers, RTG, and of course you, the fans watching on YouTube at home. It's a pleasure to be able to be here with you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks, Seth.
Race number 1 is in the books. Race number 2 will go green next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're going to want to be here. For Zach Freemo, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.